So, imagine coming back from just this massive life-changing trip.
Oh, yeah.
You're a teenager, you've just traveled across the world, seen the absolute highest peaks and, the lowest valleys of the human experience. And instead of feeling inspired by all of it, you hit a wall.
Right. Totally burnt out.
Exactly. You drop your bags in your room, sit down, and you just have a total paralyzing existential crisis.
Yeah.
You look out the window at everything people are doing, the relentless striving, the building, the fighting, just the constant acquisition of stuff. And you ask one terrifying question, which is, what is the actual point of it all?
I mean, it is arguably the ultimate human question.
Right.
And usually when a teenager asks something that heavy, society kind of pats them on the head, tells them to get a job, and assumes they'll just grow out of it. We treat existential dread like a phase.
We really do.
Yeah.
But in the scenario we're diving into today, the teenager is actually Lord Ram. He's returning from a pilgrimage thousands of years ago, and his existential crisis does not get dismissed. Instead, his question sparks one of the most profound, mind-bending philosophical dialogues in human history between him and his guru, sage Vasishta.
Which is just an incredible text.
It really is. And
Yeah.
that dialogue is what we're exploring with you today. We're doing a deep dive into a study guide published in 2025 by Daji called The Heart of Lord Ram.
Yeah, and to give you a sense of the scale here, the original text, the YogaVasishTa, is just monumental. We're talking about roughly 32,000 verses.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an absolute ocean of ancient Hindu philosophy that can be, incredibly daunting to navigate.
Oh, for sure.
So Daji took on this really ambitious project of distilling that massive text into 44 accessible, vivid stories. It's essentially this bridge connecting ancient metaphysical concepts to modern psychological struggles.
Which is exactly why we're here. Our mission for this deep dive is to act as your shortcut through those stories. We are extracting the absolute core cheat codes for navigating modern burnout and, anxiety.
Yeah, we really need those right now.
Definitely. So to do that, we're going to trace the path of Ram's teaching. We'll start by breaking down how the reality we experience is constructed. Then we'll look at the actual neurological and psychological mechanics of why we choose to suffer within that reality.
And finally, we'll explore what true liberation actually looks like for you right now without having to, quit your job and move to a cave somewhere.
Because nobody has time for that.
Exactly.
Maybe.
So, starting off, Vasishta's response to Ram's dread is this complete paradigm shift.
Yeah.
He doesn't offer comforting platitudes.
Right. No toxic positivity.
None at all.
Yeah.
He essentially tells Ram that before you can even begin to understand the point of the world, you have to understand the instrument you're using to observe it.
The mind.
Yes, you have to understand the mind. The foundational premise of the entire text is that the world is not this fixed external reality that you just happen to be walking through. The world is a direct projection of consciousness.
And Vasishta illustrates this through these incredibly trippy narratives.
Oh, they're so wild.
Like, take the story of Queen Leela. She's deeply in love with her husband, King Padma. When he eventually dies, she is just utterly consumed by grief.
Understandably.
Right. So she had previously prayed to a deity, asking for a boon that his soul would simply remain near her in their palace after his death. Suddenly, she's granted this divine sight to check on him.
And this is where it gets crazy.
Yeah, she looks for him, and what she sees just flips her entire understanding of reality upside down.
Because she discovers he hasn't gone to some distant, abstract afterlife. He has already been completely reborn.
Right.
He's living an entirely new life. He grew up as a prince, became a king, aged, fought wars, and that entire massive universe exists completely within a tiny microscopic speck in the corner of her own bedroom.
It's so hard to even wrap your head around.
It is. And even stranger, while only a few days have passed for Leela in her grief, an entire lifetime has already played out for him in that nested reality.
And Vasishta pushes the concept even further, right? Because Leela then realizes that her own universe, her grand palace, her kingdom, the stars above her, is just another tiny speck contained within another, even larger universe.
Yes, it's an infinite regress of nested realities.
Like Russian nesting dolls of universes.
Exactly. And the kicker is, every single one of those realities feels absolutely, fundamentally physical and real to the people living inside it.
I mean, when I read that, it blew my mind because this text is, what, 2,000 years old?
Roughly, yeah.
But it sounds exactly like the debates happening in theoretical physics right now.
Oh, the parallels are actually staggering. Take the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which suggests that all possible alternate histories and futures are real, each representing an actual branching universe.
Right, like the multiverse stuff we see in movies now.
Exactly. Or look at the holographic principle in string theory.
Oh, I've heard of that. What is that again?
The holographic principle basically proposes that our entire three-dimensional universe, with all its gravity and matter, might just be encoded on a two-dimensional boundary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just like an entire cosmos being encoded in a speck in Leela's bedroom. The core teaching Vasishta is trying to impart is that space and time are not rigid containers. They don't exist independently of the observer. They're flexible constructs created by consciousness itself.
Okay, hold on. I need to push back on this.
Sure, go ahead.
Because Vasishta takes this idea to the extreme with the story of King Janaka.
Oh, I love this story.
Right. So Janaka falls asleep on his throne, surrounded by his royal court. He dreams he is a starving beggar wandering in this brutal wilderness. He's suffering immensely.
Yeah, it's a really dark dream.
He finally gets a tiny bowl of gruel, someone knocks it into the mud, and his despair is completely overwhelming. Then he snaps awake.
Safe and sound.
Right, he's back on his throne. But instead of feeling relieved, he freezes. He asks, was I a king dreaming I was a beggar, or am I a beggar right now dreaming I am a king?
Which is a genuine philosophical emergency for him. His perception has been entirely destabilized.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if I'm the listener hearing this, that sounds like a recipe for total apathy.
How so?
Well, if reality is entirely subjective, if my waking life is no more real than a dream, doesn't that invalidate my actual experiences? Like, isn't that just the Matrix?
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, like if I am struggling to pay rent or dealing with a health crisis, telling me, oh, it's just a projection, feels a bit like a cop-out, does that mean nothing actually matters?
And that is the exact trap of nihilism that Vasishta is trying to help Ram avoid.
Okay.
He doesn't tell Janaka, don't worry, the king reality is the true one, the beggar was fake. Instead, he introduces a concept called the drashta, which translates to the witness.
So the witness.
Yeah. Vasishta explains that neither the king nor the beggar is your true identity. Think of a movie theater.
Okay.
When you watch a film, a raging forest fire can be projected onto the screen. The flames look real, the characters panic, but the screen itself never gets hot. It never burns.
Ah, I see. So I am the screen, not the movie.
Precisely. You are what the text calls turiya, the pure underlying consciousness.
Aturia.
Right. It's the awareness that observes the waking state, observes the dreaming state, and even remains present during deep, dreamless sleep.
That's deep.
So when you ask if your suffering matters, the text says the experience of suffering is happening. Yes, but it is a passing modification on the screen. The only thing that is truly permanent, truly unchangeable, is that observing awareness.
So the goal isn't to pretend the movie isn't playing.
Exactly. It's to remember you are the screen while you watch it.
Okay, that distinction becomes crucial when we look at the mechanics of how our thoughts shape that movie. There's this story of Gaudi the Brahmin that really drives this home.
Yes, the underwater story.
Right. So Gaudi wades into a sacred river, submerges himself, and in the few seconds he's holding his breath underwater, his mind completely takes over. He hallucinates an entire lifetime.
Just in a few seconds.
Yeah. He's born as an outcast, lives in crushing poverty, gets married, raises a whole family, grows old, and eventually dies. Then he breaks the surface of the water, gasping. It was just a vision. Only moments have passed.
But then it gets weird.
Really weird, because years later, he travels to a region he has never visited, and he physically stumbles upon the exact ruins of the imaginary village from his underwater vision. The locals even remember the names of his imaginary children.
It is a profound demonstration of how the mind blurs the line between imagination and physical reality. The YogaVasishTa argues that when consciousness is sufficiently concentrated, deeply held beliefs literally organize physical reality.
Which is wild.
It is. We tend to think of the brain as a generator of consciousness. This philosophy treats the brain more like a receiver or, a filter.
But how does that actually work mechanically? I mean, are we saying if I just think about $1 million hard enough, a bag of cash appears? Because that sounds like the worst kind of pup spirituality.
Oh no, it's far more grounded in neurology than magic.
Okay.
Look at the modern placebo effect.
Okay, yeah.
It is the most robustly documented phenomenon in medicine. A patient deeply believes they're receiving a powerful healing compound, and their physical brain literally orchestrates the release of real endogenous opioids. and alters immune responses based entirely on a belief.
So the body heals itself because the mind constructed a reality where healing was happening.
Exactly. The synapses fire identical patterns, whether a stimulus is perceived externally or generated internally.
Wow. Which means the reverse is incredibly dangerous.
Very.
Because if the brain can't tell the difference between a real external threat and a deeply imagined one, then constantly replaying a stressful memory is like physically destroying you.
That is the exact definition of trauma and chronic anxiety.
Right.
An event that no longer exists anywhere in the physical present continues to flood the nervous system with cortisol because the mind is recreating it. The body reacts as if the predator is currently in the room.
Which is awful.
It is. And this is why Daji emphasizes the practice of seeding positive thoughts in his commentary. It's not toxic positivity. It's recognizing that your thoughts are literal blueprints.
Right.
If you cultivate a still mind, the intentions you seed in that stillness have immense physiological and psychological power.
Okay, but if our minds possess this incredible superpower to architect reality, that raises a massive logical question.
Which is?
Why on earth do we use that superpower to build nightmares? Like, if we can project anything, why do we constantly manifest anxiety, imposter syndrome, and stress?
That is a great question. And to answer that, Vasishta points to two foundational mechanics of human suffering. The first is unconscious desire, and the second is ignorance. Let's look at how he explains desire.
Right, he uses the story of the golden deer, which feels incredibly relevant today.
It really does.
So a hunter is walking through the forest and spots this impossibly beautiful, glowing golden deer. He's completely mesmerized and immediately starts chasing it. But the deer is perfectly elusive.
It's always just out of reach.
Right. It operates like a mirage, always staying just 20 yards ahead, keeping the hunter hooked. The hunter becomes completely obsessed. He forgets that he's hungry. He abandons his family. He loses all track of time. He runs deeper and deeper into a dark, hostile part of the forest. And then, without warning, the deer just vanishes into thin air. The hunter is left stranded, starving, and completely lost in the dark.
That golden deer represents what the text calls vasana.
Vasa.
Yeah. Vasana isn't just a simple want like wanting a glass of water. It's a deep-seated, often unconscious psychological tendency or craving.
Okay.
Notice the mechanism of the deer. It never actually nourishes the hunter. It only offers the promise of fulfillment, perpetually delayed. Unconscious desire runs your entire life while completely convincing you that you're making rational choices. You never stop to ask, do I actually need this thing, or am I just addicted to the feeling of the chase?
I mean, that is the perfect metaphor for the modern algorithmic social media feed.
Oh, absolutely.
The golden deer is the scroll. The platforms are designed to trigger dopamine not when you find something satisfying, but in the anticipation of the next swipe.
Yes. The payoff is always supposedly one video away.
Exactly. Hours vanish, and you look up from your screen feeling completely drained, lost in the dark. Or think about the moving goalposts of career ambition.
That's another great example.
You stress for years to get the promotion, you finally get the title, and the thrill lasts exactly one afternoon before your mind immediately fixates on the next rung of the ladder. The desire is endless.
And once that endless desire drags us into the dark forest, we become highly vulnerable to the second mechanic of suffering, which is avidya.
Avidya.
Right, which translates to ignorance or a lack of clear seeing.
Which brings us to the travelers in the haunted forest.
This is a classic.
It is. So a group is walking through the woods, and as the sun sets, the darkness starts playing tricks on their minds. Every shadow stretching across the path morphs into a demon. Every rustle in the bushes is a predator circling them.
Total panic.
Yeah, they spend the entire night huddled together, frozen in absolute terror, completely convinced they are going to die. But then dawn breaks, the light hits the forest, and they look around. The terrifying demons were just gnarled tree trunks. The ghosts were just vines hanging from the branches.
Nothing actually changed.
Right. Nothing in the physical environment changed. The only thing that changed was the light.
That is the perfect anatomy of catastrophizing.
Mm-hmm.
The mind encounters a neutral or slightly ambiguous situation like a dark forest, and because it's operating from a state of ignorance and fear, it layers an enormous, suffocating narrative of doom onto it.
Right.
The adrenaline, the heart palpitations, the terror those travelers felt was 100% physically real to their nervous systems. But the root cause was entirely manufactured by their own projection.
The classic modern version of this is getting an email from your manager at 4:55 p.m. on a Friday that just says, "Can we chat first thing Monday?"
Oh, the worst.
Right. You instantly build a reality where you're being fired, your career is over, and you're losing your home. You ruin your entire weekend suffering over a predator that is actually just a vine. Mark Twain summarized this perfectly when he said, "I have had many troubles in my life, most of which never happened."
It really highlights a crucial point, which is that wisdom doesn't mean you have to chop down the forest.
Right.
It doesn't mean aggressively changing every external circumstance in your life to make it completely safe. It means changing the internal light you're using to perceive those circumstances.
I get the theory, but how do we actually apply it? Because Vasishta tells another story about a man who wakes up, sees his own shadow for the first time, and completely panics.
Right, he tries to outrun it.
Yeah. He doesn't know what it is, so he runs, but the shadow keeps pace. He tries to fight it, but it mimics his punches. He runs in sheer terror until he physically collapses from exhaustion.
And then the sage comes along.
Right, finally a passing sage yells out, "Just stand still!" The man stops. He rests in the shade of a large tree. And because he's in the shade, the shadow vanishes. The sage says, "That was you. You were running from yourself."
It's just brilliant psychology.
Yeah.
The shadow represents the suppressed parts of our psyche, our unexamined fears, our past traumas, our insecurities.
Okay.
The instinct is to outrun them through distraction or fight them through control. But the harder you run, the larger the shadow looms. Every time you frantically avoid a difficult emotion, you implicitly send a signal to your nervous system confirming that the emotion is dangerous. You feed the fear.
Let me put you on the spot, though. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, go for it.
It's easy for a sage to say, stand still. But if a listener is stressed out of their mind today about a high-stakes presentation or a medical diagnosis, how do they practically stand still? If I try not to think about my anxiety, I just get way more anxious.
Yeah, you're touching on the white bear problem in psychology.
No way.
The white bear problem. If you try to aggressively suppress a thought like, don't think of a white bear, your brain has to constantly check in on the concept of the white bear to make sure you aren't thinking about it.
So you end up thinking about it constantly.
Exactly. Suppression amplifies the issue. So the YogaVasishTa offers a tool called Viveka, or discernment.
Viveka.
Yes. It's the practice of pausing and looking objectively at the fear without reacting to it. And Daji outlines a very specific heartfulness cleaning practice to facilitate this.
How does that actually work, practically?
Well, at the end of the day, instead of immediately distracting yourself with television or scrolling on your phone, you sit in silence. You actively invite the day's tensions, the heavy impressions, to surface.
That sounds uncomfortable.
It can be, but you don't analyze them or judge yourself for feeling them. You just face them. You acknowledge the shadow. Then, using your intention, you visualize those complexities simply evaporating or flowing out of your system. By turning toward the tension intentionally, rather than running from it, you take away its power. You essentially step into the shade.
Wow, okay. So if we manage to do this, if we stop frantically chasing the golden deer of ambition, and we stop outrunning the shadows of our own anxiety, what is on the other side?
The big question.
Right. We usually assume that achieving a spiritual breakthrough means fleeing the modern world. Like, we picture someone moving to an ashram or living completely off the grid.
And that is exactly the assumption the YogaVasishTa wants to dismantle. True liberation is not a change of zip code.
It perfectly skewers that idea with the story of Queen Shudala and King Sikadvaja.
Yes.
They are both deeply invested in seeking enlightenment. The queen actually attains it first, quietly, internally. When she tries to gently share her insights with her husband, his ego just flares up.
He can't handle it.
Not at all. He basically dismisses her, implying that real spirituality requires, extreme dramatic action.
Right.
So he abdicates his throne, gives up his vast kingdom, and runs off to the deep forest to be a hardcore hermit. He builds a tiny little hut, gets a water pot and a walking stick, and assumes he is now deeply spiritual. But he becomes fiercely, obsessively attached to his little hut and his routine.
He physically renounced his kingdom, but he carried his entire inner kingdom of pride, control, and status right into the forest with him.
Exactly.
His identity just shifted from powerful ruler to superior spiritual ascetic.
I laughed out loud reading this because, I mean, it is the exact trope of the burned out tech executive.
Oh, totally.
You know the story, someone quits their 80-hour-a-week corporate job, buys an organic farm in the country to find peace, but within a month, they're treating the farm with the exact same toxic, spreadsheet-obsessed, hyper-competitive stress.
Yeah, they bring their neuroses to the country.
We pack all our inner complexities right into our moving boxes.
Exactly. The location changes, but the internal weather remains identical. The YogaVasishTa makes it very clear that true renunciation has nothing to do with throwing away your physical possessions. It is entirely internal. It's dropping the ego's obsessive need to attach itself to an identity. Notice how the king's ego created a strict hierarchy. He refused to learn from his own wife because it threatened his self-image.
Right, so Queen Chudala has to pull this elaborate trick. She disguises herself as a male sage named Kumbha and visits him in the forest.
Because that's what he expects a teacher to look like.
Exactly. Because Kumbha fits the king's preconceived notion of a proper teacher, his ego actually allows him to listen. Slowly, over months, Kumbha forces the king to dismantle his new attachments.
Which is painful for him.
Oh, yeah. Kumbha makes him burn down his beloved hut and smash his sacred water pot. Finally, stripped of everything, the king just sits completely still. He drops his rigid identity as a great renouncer, and in that moment of surrender, he actually finds freedom.
And only then does she reveal she was his wife the whole time.
Such a great reveal.
It really is. The lesson there is the necessity of swadhyaya, or rigorous self-study. We have to be brutally honest and ask ourselves, where am I just performing a transformation for my own ego, rather than actually living it?
And the ultimate symbol of that unperformed, quiet liberation is Pushinda.
The crow.
Yeah. Sage Vasishta climbs the mythical Mount Meru to seek out this ancient, legendary being who has supposedly survived the birth and death of multiple universes.
Right.
Vasishta arrives expecting some glowing, majestic deity, and instead he finds a crow. An ordinary crow just sitting in a nest.
It's a beautifully grounding image. Liberation isn't reserved for celestial beings, you know. It's available in the most ordinary forms.
Yeah.
Vasishta asks the crow, how do you survive the literal dissolution of the cosmos? And Bhushunda explains his secret. When a universe begins to collapse, he doesn't panic, and he doesn't cling to the dissolving reality.
So what does he do?
He shifts his awareness, he stops identifying with the physical objects that are being destroyed, and he rests entirely in the pure consciousness that holds those objects. He identifies with the canvas, not the fading paint. You can only be destroyed by the loss of what you falsely identify with.
Which brings this massive philosophical journey full circle.
It really does.
After hearing thousands of these stories about nested universes, golden deer, and ancient crows, we return to the teenager, Lord Ram. The boy who was completely paralyzed by the apparent pointlessness of human existence.
Right.
When Vasishta finally concludes the teaching, Ram doesn't jump up and shout that he solved the riddle of the universe. He doesn't float away on a cloud. He just goes totally silent.
Yeah.
He closes his eyes. When he opens them, the existential panic is completely gone. Vasishta asks him how he feels, and Ram says, I am at peace. Not the peace that comes from solving a specific problem, but the peace that was always there beneath every problem. And then he just stands up and goes right back to his daily administrative duties at the royal court.
That right there is the pinnacle of the teaching. It's called Jivan Mukti.
Jivan Mukti.
Yes. It means liberation while fully living in the world. Enlightenment isn't waiting for you on the other side of retirement or when you finally clear your inbox or when the kids are grown.
Right.
Peace is not downstream of an achievement. Peace is the fundamental nature of the screen we talked about earlier. Right. It is available right now, exactly where you sit.
Yeah.
Ram didn't learn a new magic trick to fix the world. He just dropped the misidentification. He stopped fighting the illusion and started operating freely within it.
He didn't change the terrifying forest, he just changed the light.
Exactly.
And that is the ultimate shortcut we promised you when we started this deep dive. In a world of absolute information overload where you're bombarded daily with external stressors, the core takeaway from Daji's The Heart of Lord Ram is this: the world is as you see it, and you see it exactly as your mind is.
It radically shifts the burden of reality. It takes the power away from the chaotic outside world and places it firmly back in your own center.
Exactly. So, to wrap this up, you want to leave you with one final thought to chew on as you go about your day. At the end of the text, Vasishta outlines the final stages of a person's evolution in wisdom. We won't throw the complex Sanskrit terms at you, but the concept is profound. He describes a stage where you stop just tolerating the world and start seeing the sacred, the profound reality in absolutely everything around you.
Right, Padartha Bhavana.
Yeah. And the final stage is living continuously as that pure, unbothered awareness, regardless of what is happening externally.
And it asks a deeply practical question of you, the listener, right now.
Right.
Think about the most mundane, frustrating part of your routine. Your crowded morning commute, the noise of construction outside your window, the endless stream of emails.
If you start today by trying to recognize that your mind is constructing the stress of that commute just as surely as King Janaka constructed his nightmare, what would it take for you to fundamentally shift your perspective? What would it take for you to stop staring out the window, completely paralyzed by the chaotic weather of your own mind, and realize that you are and always have been the sky?